Welcome to the Textbook Roundtable, the podcast where we bring together the sharpest minds in fleet tech, telematics, and installation services to break down the industry's biggest shifts and innovations. If you're a fleet manager, technician, or industry pro looking for real talk on what's working and what's not, you're in the right place. Today, we've got a guest who lives and breathes this industry, Spencer Ingram. Spencer is not just a guy who installs fleet tech. He's been in the trenches for a decade, evolving from a 1099 installer to running his own company, Titan Voltage. He's seen every challenge, every shift, and every opportunity in this space. And today, he's here to break it all down. But what really makes Spencer stand out? He's a builder, a problem solver, someone who knows how to make things work. So today we're talking shop, from the evolution of installations to what it really takes to make it as a technician, the future of telematics, and why the gig model is changing everything. Let's get into it. So how'd you get into the telematics industry, and what's been your evolution?
So I started in, I guess you could say I'm at my 10-year anniversary last month. I've always been kind of like into a lot of different things. Like my first job when I was 15, I was a lifeguard at the YMCA. I did that for like 3 years. And then when I was 18, 19, I went on my 2-year mission. I went to the South Africa Cape Town mission. So I lived in RSA for 2 years, and that was a fantastic experience. But while I was on my mission, my mom was looking for work from home jobs. So she just applied to work as a scheduler for an installation company, not knowing anything about the industry really. So she was working as a scheduler for that company. So when I got back from South Africa, I worked as a bread baker at Great Harvest Bread Bakery. I was in school. I was working as a ramp agent for an airline. I was doing custom home theater installations, and my mom just said, "Hey, I'm a scheduler for this company. You should learn a little bit more about how this world works, because it's really interesting, because I send technicians out to jobs, and it's just a really fascinating industry." So I reached out to that company and said, "Hey, let me learn a little bit more about this." This is in January 2015. I got onboarded as a technician, and most of what we were doing back then was like 3-wire stuff, right? For CalAmp and others. So I quickly learned how to use a multimeter and kind of figured stuff out in the field as an independent contractor, 1099.
You spent some time in Africa, because I think it's interesting. What I'm curious about is you spent 2 years there, right?
Yeah.
All right. So during those 2 years, what would you say is the biggest thing that you got from that?
So religion wise, like I definitely enjoyed sharing my religion, my faith in Jesus Christ. I enjoyed, like, I've always been super open-minded. I value and love to experience different perspectives, because I think being open-minded is the best way to go in life. So I'd go sit in a mosque with imams and I'd hear about Islam. I'd go to like a Baptist church in South Africa and worship with them. So like, even while I was there sharing my faith and my religion, I would go and participate in other religious organizations. And I've just learned, there's just good people in every culture all around the world that have common foundations and common values. There's a lot of people today that want to disagree with that statement that I just made. But in my personal lived experience, there's excellence and goodness to be found in every corner of the world. So religion wise, it was good. I feel like I strengthened my faith in Jesus Christ. And outside of that, more culturally, like the food was incredible. South Africa is like the opposite of the United States in the sense that we try to have like this melting pot where all the cultures just kind of become American. Obviously, we steal parts we like from other cultures. We co-opted pizza and we make it our own. Take Chinese food and make Panda Express, which is barely even Chinese food, but orange chicken is delicious. To win the Le Mans, we hire all of the, what were they? What country did we poach from to win the Le Mans in like 63 or 68 or something like that? Remember? It's that race that Ford was participating in and getting their butts kicked, and they were tired of it. So they hired a bunch of foreign engineers to develop the GT40 or whatever it was called. I can't remember what it was called. And it took first, second, and third place like 3 years in a row, right? So yeah, it's like America, go America, but people don't realize we hired foreign engineers to do that. So that's the American way, right? We just take what we like about other things, we call it our own, and move forward. But in South Africa, it's very culturally segregated. So you have like this whole culture over here with their own food, their own languages and everything. And I loved it all, man. Like there's a lot of Afrikaans food and things. There's a lot of Osa food and things. There's like 11 official languages in the country. There's a lot of Indian foods, curries, and I just loved the food, man. I loved the climate. It was just awesome.
All right, so let's fast forward. Now your mom, she was a scheduler. While she was a scheduler, she seen that there was an opportunity for you. You went
Sure.
and you started learning the three wires and everything that's associated with the telematics industry.
But eventually, you know, I was working with Verizon Connect. At the time, it was Telogis, Fleetmatics, Network Fleet. You know, we were working with like NextTrack. We were working with a lot of different companies. Probably mostly, for me personally, the majority of what I did was with Verizon Connect in the form of Telogis and Fleetmatics, I would say. But we had a lot of other systems that we would install as well.
And this is you under an installation company, a telematics.
Yeah, this is me, Spencer, under an installation company, and that was the most of my exposure. You know, they would just drop jobs on my calendar. I'd go knock them out, and yeah, wash, rinse, and repeat.
During that time frame where you was a technician, they would drop in jobs on your schedule. What was it about that process that you appreciated?
You show up on site, and the fleet owner point of contact story is different than the technician story is different than the requester's story. So, you know, you show up having to reconcile three stories out of the gate. There's the scope of work that I understand as a technician, the scope of work that the point of contact understood, and the scope of work that the rep that ordered the work understood. And very rarely did they all align, you know, like, hey, you're here to do 5 installs in these vehicles. It's like, no, I'm here to do 3 repairs on these 3 vehicles. And then it's like, you know, it just, I excelled in sorting that out. You know, I always kind of said that, like, I know I'm doing a good job if I leave that site with a job offer, right? And that actually happened more frequently than not. I'd have companies say, hey, you got to come in here and interview with us. We want you to come work for our company. And so, you know, that's how, that was always the biggest compliment for me, to have the customers I'm there to serve inviting to bring me in to be part of their valuable organization. So, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge of each new day. I do really well with the inconsistency, as far as I've never really been like an 8 to 6 every day, Monday through Friday kind of guy. Like, I enjoy talking to many different people, meeting new people, confronting new challenges every day, and excelling in the actual installation work itself, right? I enjoyed the challenge of that. There's a sweet spot, though, where it's like you enjoy the challenge, but it is pretty inefficient as you're starting out. But as you become more competent and capable, and you feel like that efficiency is really kicking in, that's kind of the sweet spot, because you're still getting the diversity of meeting new people every day and providing an excellent service, but you also happen to be really good at your job.
A lot of people would say that you being on Textbook Roundtable was kind of like a conflict of interest, even to your point from before, right? It's kind of like, you know, I'm not going to talk about Titan voltage and we'll get
Yeah.
to Titan voltage in a second, but people would say there's a conflict of interest there. Why would you feel like there's a conflict?
Well, I just want to make sure that your interests are best covered too, because I know you, David, you're like the originator of this whole textbook, you know, veterans fleet management ecosystem, and I admire it. So let me tell you just a little bit more transparency, and that'll inform my, you know, my explanation. So another little long-winded answer here coming up, but I've always told myself ever since 2015, when I started in this industry really needs a gigafied app. Okay. I've always said that. I've always said this industry needs a gigafied app. And so eventually, back in around, I guess, circa 2017 to 2020-ish, in that era, probably more so 2020, I personally started feeling like I didn't have very much control over my work pipeline, if that made sense. I was, at the time, still only really working with one installation group. And they were as much as I admired what they did, and as much as I admired their company, they were essentially a gatekeeper, as far as I only have the event. I was their, you know, primary favored technician in the area. So it was pretty much guaranteed that if they get work in my area, they would send it to me. but the only opportunities I had access to were the opportunities that company was presented. So I kept having situations where I would go on a site and I'm like, yeah, remember me? I was here 2 months ago. And they're like, oh yeah, great. We love you. Yeah, someone else came last week and they sucked. I'm like, someone else came last week to do what? They're like, oh, to do 50 installs and they messed them all up. Can you go fix them? And I'm like, what do you like? We have a great relationship. My install group has a great relationship. So who sent someone else? And they're like, some sales rep at some company that sent like Acme Install Corp or something, some trunk slammer that doesn't know what they're doing. And that was annoying to me. So I didn't really have a problem with my install group, but I had a problem that I had little control over generating work for myself and getting jobs and tickets in the pipeline. So with that being said, I largely just split off on my own. With Titan Voltage, we started bringing on technicians, bringing on customers, generating work. And we always tell our technicians, go everywhere you can to generate as much work as possible for yourself.
That's essentially the flow of just about everyone, right? Like
Right.
At some point you break off and you start to just want to create your own because you feel like you can do it better.
At the same time as well, like if you're under an installation group, if they ever have friction with their customers such that you've stopped receiving tickets because there's some friction with your parent install group and their customers, then you lose out on opportunities. I always tell everybody, look, we are independent contractors, 1099 in the industry. So if you need more work, you find whatever install groups or direct relationships that you could have the bandwidth to manage, and you partner with them. Partner with 5 install groups, partner with Textbook, partner with Titan Voltage, partner with, whatever opportunities you can find, do it, because we're independent contractors. So that was the context. We did a lot of big projects, nationwide, locally, whatever. But eventually, I just was starting to get burned out because I traveled to every state besides Alaska within a 3-year time period. And I've got a wife, 4 kids. Like, I was just getting burned out, too much travel. It wasn't good for the family. So that's kind of the context where I kind of spun it down, but I kept doing local work in my area. But it was just too much to manage, like the nationwide, workload, whatever. So I kind of shrunk it, spun it down. And then I can't even remember when. I feel like it was 2 summers ago. Someone on your team, I think it was Eddie. I think Eddie pinged me on Facebook and said, hey, can you get an install done for us? And I'm like, yeah, who are you? What's going on? And he's like, we're Textbook. I'm like, well, that's cute. What does that mean? And so he sent me a link to the app. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, yes, finally. Like, I've wanted to make an app like this for years and years and years. And I've always been in the mentality of kind of go with the cutting edge. If you ask me if I wanted the Eagles or the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, I would have told you after the game and I would have picked the winner. I'll always follow the winners. I'll follow the winning companies. I pick whoever I think is doing the best job and whoever I think is winning, because there's this book that I like called The Science of Getting Rich from 1910. I think you and I have talked about it before. And it talks about the principle of the advancing thought, and that you want to surround yourself with people who have advancing thoughts, who are progressing in life, who are achieving things, who are wanting to do more and more and more. And you need to be that person yourself, and you need to surround yourself with people like that. So if I'm driving a horse and buggy down the road and someone pulls up next to me in a Honda Civic and says, hop in, I can go faster, I'm like, cool. So I hop on and I go with them. I leave my horse and buggy behind, and then someone pulls up in a, Kia Stinger or something. It's like, hey, this goes even faster and I like it better. Let's hop on and go, and then someone pulls up in a Ferrari. You get the point, right?
I know that you had this idea before, digitizing the process, but when you actually got into it, what was the outcome for you?
Well, the outcome's great. The transparency in the app is great. I always know what I'm going to get paid and when I'm going to get paid for the work that I complete. And it's very just clear, cut and dry. No, no nonsense, very low friction jobs. You receive the request. You could view all the details in the app, the automated emails and texts to, notifications to remind you. of the app is great. The team is great to chat back and forth with when I need help and support. All the guides are in the frequently asked questions section, so I can click on that and get to any install guides that I need. So the app was very intuitive for me. It's definitely, out of any install group I've ever worked with, it's definitely the most intuitive app.
You obviously know about the technician app. Are you aware of the other applications that we have for the customers?
Once you guys have a pipeline in place for a specific type of install, then it's great. And you're only evolving and adding more and more features, but right now, in my opinion, the last time I used it, it's well suited for known variables and known situations. Like if I wanted to get on there right now and book a tech to do a backup camera, it'd be difficult. But when you guys are especially working on like your enterprise integrations and you know the product and you have a pipeline built for it, it's great. So yeah, that was my experience. It was awesome.
So to your point from before, if a customer goes on there and they schedule it themselves, then the whole process of you getting on site and being unsure of what's going on, that goes away.
Yeah, exactly. If the end user is the one putting in the request, then you only have to deal with 2 stories, not 3. You have the scope of work that was provided to the tech and the scope of work as the customer understands it. And thankfully, since it's the customer providing the scope of work directly to the technician, you really have 1 story, because the likelihood that there's going to be 2 different versions from what the only way that there can be 2 different versions from what the customer requested to what the technician received is if the customer did not understand the request that they were making. I mean, if they said, like just some ridiculous request and it's like, oh, that's not actually what you wanted this. That's the only way that could occur. But when the customer is communicating directly what they want to the technician, you're cutting out any other middlemen, project managers, whatever, that could convolute the scope. So yeah, it's way more efficient.
And also there's an advantage when the technician's on site and the scope of work changes, 2 additional vehicles came on. They don't need to go call a telematics provider and try to book those 2 additional installations while the technician's on site. Now they could just go on to textbook, make the adjustment inside of their job. And if the technician has the availability, they'll make the adjustments and that's it. The work can get done on site. Tell me more about the transition perspective of you going from working for the installation company to building out your own. And what was the strategy that you used to essentially be able to do that? Because now you gotta hunt your own food. So I'm curious about that transition of you just getting the work to you hunting your own food. How that looked like for you?
So it's like twofold. You can find sources of work directly from fleet owners and fleet administrators, or, who can order work directly, or you can go to installation companies that have their own in-house sales department, likely their own installation team. And you can, like, I'll use like a leads generator called Lusha, which crawls and scrapes LinkedIn to pull up their phone number and email address. So if I pull up an enterprise, an organization on LinkedIn, and I click on view key people or whatever, Lusha is an add-on, not sponsoring this podcast. Lusha is an add-on that pops up in the side window and will load that contact information. So, like I would just look for install coordinators or installation departments and just ping them and say, hey, are you guys accepting new installers? Are you looking for new installers? A lot of them are like, no, we're good. We've got everything that we need. Or some of them say the majority of our customers self-install their systems because they're so easy to install. There are a lot of companies that don't have any installation pipeline or resources, but are happy to say, if we have a customer that asks us for install, we're happy to add you to a list and then refer them to you if they need any work done. So that's an additional avenue right there. But yeah, I mean, it's really just the grind of, hey, you got to find a pipeline that needs work done. And then from there, you need to recruit and train technicians. And for that, we primarily use Indeed because they have their free job postings where we'll just post jobs in various areas. And look for people to apply. And then, of course, we'll take them through our vetting process. So we typically have good success with like oil change technicians or auto detailers or people that have experience doing a teardown. We put them in a probationary period, watch them closely, coach them, guide them, walk them through the installation process. I started making training videos because it's a lot easier to just send someone a video link and say, watch this, let me know if you have any questions, and then saying, what'd you learn? How about this? How about this? Ask them a bunch of questions based off the video, and you can tell quickly if they're going to connect and do well in the industry.
Is your team that you find on Indeed and train, are they W-2s or 1099s?
All 1099.
Okay.
All 1099. Yeah. I tried going the W-2 route once back in like 2021, 2022, hiring some W-2 techs, but it ended up just being more of a hassle than it was worth.
Why?
A variety of different reasons, just more administrative HR stuff, if that makes sense. Like, so here's an example. If you have an employee go and rent, if you have a W-2 employee, I'll refer to employee as a W-2 and contractor as a 1099. So that's the vernacular I'll use. If you have an employee go rent a car in the company name, forgets to select insurance or whatever, causes an issue, like, we never had this happen per se, but this is just an example. We had very similar things happen where now the company is liable, my company is liable to fix whatever, like you're just more responsible for that person, right? Whereas if they are a contractor, if there's an issue, you can say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, this is your thing. You have ownership of this. So you either fix it to maintain your business. That's why I also advise our technicians and contractors to go contract with a lot of different companies, because it as well helps pass that Department of Labor sniff test where it's like, are you a contractor or are you an employee? One of the criteria they look at when they're making that determination to avoid potential misclassification issues is how many clients do you have? Because if you only have one client and they're governing your schedule, telling you when to be, where to be there, especially if they're providing tools or other resources, there's a very good chance that you'll get hit with a misclassification saying, nope, you're calling this person a 1099 contractor, but you, in a sense, control everything about what they're doing, especially if they get paid by the hour. Then yeah, you're gonna, if someone complains about that, you're gonna get your hands slapped. You're gonna say you misclassified this person. You're trying to pay them as a 1099 to skirt around payroll tax and everything else.
And this is really why I don't feel like there's a conflict, right? Like, technicians are technical. They're able to get on and, set up their schedule however they want. And when there's a flow of work that comes in, if there's an open slot, they get slotted for it. If they're busy doing installations for another company or for themselves or whatever, then they won't get slotted for it. It's really that simple.
Well, and yeah, I never have any of our guys sign like a non-compete or anything, because it's like, it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, you go out, you do your own thing. If you think you can do it better than I am, better than we are, we definitely don't want to force or coerce you into this relationship. Because if you're sitting there doing work for us, just resentful and bitter about you think you can do a better job, but we're not going to let you try. It's like, no, man, I'm confident in the service and value that we add. Like, if I'm going to try to contractually force you to stay exclusive with me, then it means I'm not actually confident in the value that I'm bringing. So I always tell people, even if a tech's like, hey man, I want to go off and do my own thing, I'm like, okay, great. You have two options. Go out and do your own thing by yourself, or go out and do your own thing with me. Like, you don't have to turn off the pipeline of the stuff I'm sending to you. Dude, you've got my blessing. I'm not your employer. You're not like, dude, I'll help you.
Yeah.
I'll set you up. I'll tell you where to go.
I think in this industry, right, they installation companies, a lot of them, not all of them, but a good majority of them, right, they would essentially try to pigeonhole you to just work for them, right? Like, hey, look, if you're working for this installation company, we're not going to continue to give you work. And for me, I'm kind of like, hey, just update your calendar. I don't care.
No, yeah,
Who you
like
work?
when Textbook came on the scene, I was telling my friends in the industry, hey man, you got to sign up with Textbook. Getting a lot of work flowing in, they're really good. You need to get in your area. You need to sign up now because more people are going to sign up in your area, and you want to get your foot in the door first and be there for it. But yeah, like I've had technicians reach out to me that are doing an install, and we installed a variety of different components, and I've had people like tech say, hey man, they want to give me a $20 tip, can I accept it? I'm like, why are you asking me, bro? Like, as long as you're not asking the customers for tips, like I'll be mad about that. But bro, I mean, like, take $100 tip. Like, I don't care. This is your business. Smile, tell the customer thank you so much. Tell them they don't have to do that, but you appreciate it, and this is your business. We are in a sense feeding business, feeding leads, feeding opportunities, and brokering work. But
Yeah,
the
I feel the
technicians are
same
running
way
their
as
own
you, right?
business.
When it's kind of like you look at a technician, they're like, "Hey, look, I'm not gonna do work for Textbook anymore." It's like, why,
Sure.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you just update your calendar, just do whatever work comes in, right? Like, why say no to any opportunities in the future just for what exactly?
Right. I mean, like, even if you're going to take a day job, if you're going to be off at
Right.
3 or 4, whatever, just put your Textbook availability as, look, I'm available from 5 to 9 every
Yeah.
evening. There's
Yeah.
so many fleets whose vehicles are tied up during the day, and they want someone to come late at night to work on the vehicles. Yeah. I mean, when you're an independent contractor, it doesn't make sense to burn a bridge. Leave the bridge open,
100%.
Um, I'll tell you one funny story. Like, let's say there's an install group brokering work. We'll call them group A. There's an install group. We'll call them group B, who both have the same client and both contract with the same tech. I was talking to a tech one day that's like, if company A calls me for a request, I turn it down by default because I know company B will call me 10 minutes later with the same request and they pay more. So I'm like, man, this guy really has this system gamified, because company A reaches out and says, hey, tech, we'll call him Bob, says, hey, Bob, we've got 2 installs they want tomorrow. Can you do it? He says, no. And so company A has to go back to their customer and say, sorry, we don't have a tech available.
Especially if he's the only tech that's in the area.
So the customer that's paying for it, we'll call them Acme Telematics. They're like, okay, group A doesn't have a technician available tomorrow. We really need it done. So they call the next on the list, group B, and say, hey, we need a tech tomorrow to do 2 installs. Do you have anyone available? Group B calls Tech Bob, says, hey, are you available tomorrow to do 2 installs? He's like, absolutely. You know why? Because group A pays me $30 an install. Group B pays me $50 an install. So, yep, there you go. I've never done that. I've never been in a situation to do that, but I did talk to Tech Bob, and I thought that was a really funny story that you would appreciate. Before I forget, I was also super impressed with Textbook's pay rates and structure. Very fair, near, if not the top of what technicians would expect from a fair paying company. So I just wanted to throw that in before I forgot.
No, I appreciate that, because there's obviously different perspectives and views on what's fair, what's considered fair. Quite frankly, I'd like to continue working towards getting technicians more. And there's a lot of work that needs to get done for us to actually get there, but it's a journey. And we're essentially working this hybrid model where we have to work like this traditional model because that's what everybody's used to, and that affects our overhead.
If someone hears what Textbook pays the technician, and if they say that's not a fair market rate, to me, that just simply says they don't understand the industry. Because I know what all the install groups pay their technicians. Like, I know the industry. I've been doing this for 10 years. So if someone looks at Textbook's rates and says they're below market average, I'm like, what markets are you operating in? Like, maybe you run a detailing business or whatever, like something out of this industry, and you're simply looking at it like, I'm not going to touch a vehicle under X amount. Maybe that makes sense, but again, it backs up you don't understand the telematics space.
Yeah. And honestly, I really feel like when the telematics industry was building out its infrastructure, its current infrastructure, they had limited resources. And because they had limited resources, obviously there's high demand. And, when you start to get more resources, then the demand on that kind of goes down, right? So before, when you got into the industry, maybe you was getting $500 an installation, right? Who knows? But today there's a current infrastructure and that affects pricing. And quite frankly, if you look at telematics companies, they have been working towards trying to remove the installation process from their scope, right? And with that, they've done product development to make the installations as simple as possible. And that's where we're at right now. There has to be some acknowledgement from the technicians to say, hey, I'm doing plug and plays, bro, right? Like for $50.
You're exactly right. And the thing is, people have to be willing to evolve. They have to. Like I said, when I started in the industry in 2015, everything was 3-wire. Everything was 3-wire. And then you had the ELD mandate and a lot of the companies that were just doing 3-wire power ground ignition. Now it's like, okay, with the ELD mandate, now we have to pull in CAN bus data. You had a lot of early adopters and people that were already in that space reading data off the ECM or ECU, the DLC. But the thing is, the industry is going to go in the direction of easier adoption because it means lower barrier to entry for their customers to adopt their solution. I don't want to derail this thing, but I'm also super controversial in my views of automation. Because again, going back to my mission in South Africa, you talk about regressive policies. We were in a city at one point called Port Elizabeth, a city of 2 million people there in the Eastern Cape. And we were trying to do a stupid gardening project. And you couldn't find a mechanical, motorized, apparently, this is what I was told, someone was going around to various shops trying to find a rototiller to tear up the ground. And what they said, I don't know if anyone told them this at the time or what, but what they said is apparently they would rather you hire people with shovels because it creates jobs. They're like, we want you to hire people to come dig up this garden because a rototiller, a labor-saving device, just takes away landscapers and gardeners' jobs, right? So I can't stand that. I'm like, okay, America was built on hard work, but we're also built on avoiding work, It's like the reason we have a laundry machine in our homes is because we don't want to walk to the creek with a washboard anymore and scrub our clothes down. So all of that is in a way to say there are downsides to automation and AI taking jobs. But in every case so far, it only led to more life to all. Someone's going to lose their job. True. But it's going to result in a better state as long as net efficiency increases. Because that's what happened in agriculture when we were developing tractors, and that is automation. You're enabling a farmer to cultivate 20 times more space than what they were previously able to do. That is automation. So anyone who's against automation that leads to job loss is really just touting regressive ideology that's going to keep people locked into their current mindset. So it's like, with that being said, like there's always been a threat ever since I started in this industry of installs are going to be so easy. Everybody's going to self-install. No one's going to need professional installation.
Why do you think they want the installation portion to go away from the telematics company side?
Well, the cost of adoption.
Cost, right. Now, if you remove that cost burden from them, then there's no problem to solve at that point. And if they're pushing their customers to textbook direct booking to schedule local technicians directly, then they remove that cost burden that has brought them down for all these years.
A sales rep that's doing their job will say, look, Acme Telematics, our competitor, they are selling this as a bundle, including installation. You're going to be paying for their project managers. You're going to be paying for all that bloat, all that infrastructure. That would make sense if you made that argument. But to say they're not going to pay for the install directly, it's like, it's more efficient because there are so many sales reps or enterprise reps where it's like the barrier that costs them the deal is the cost of deployment. So if they could make that go away, that'd be great. But the other thing is, though, there's theoretical and there's reality, where people have been saying this industry is going away ever since I've started in this industry, but it's only gotten bigger. It's only gotten bigger. So there's also that reality. It's like, yeah, in some far off event horizon, there might not be a need for telematics installs. I mean, look, man, like if someone can get through the hood on a vehicle with a very robust new signal technology, wouldn't it be great if a telematics device was just like a ring that you can stick on the positive terminal of any battery? And it just, look, man, because like, you know how there's like Ethernet over power adapters for your house where you can plug one Ethernet adapter into your power socket, plug another one, and it's sending the Ethernet signal over Romex. I'm like, look, everything in your car is connected via wire. What if you could connect something to the positive terminal of a battery and ultimately get into the CAN bus system of all connected features and just say, hey, here's one device, boom, hook it up to the battery, OEM solution across everything. It just doesn't matter. You've got everything you want, you know? So like, but again, that's probably never going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. And look, you know, people say a lot of this telemetry data is being included in OEM solutions off the line. We can interface with it. And I'm like, here's my opinion on that. You ready for this? Mind meld here is I come from a custom home theater installation background. So what do you use, David, to watch Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu? What do you personally use to watch your streaming services?
TV.
The TV, okay? And your apps, so you're using the apps built into the TV. You don't have an Apple TV box or a Fire Stick or a Roku Stream Bar.
I do have a Fire Stick.
A Fire Stick, okay. So let me say, whenever a TV provider like Sony builds apps into their TV ecosystem, I personally don't like it. Because I'm like, focus on your core competency, Sony or whoever. You're trying to make a TV, make it the best TV ever. But when you marry it with this, I'm like, let the app people do the app stuff. Let the TV people do the TV stuff. You're not going to upgrade RAM and hardware with a firmware update. So now you are left in this situation where your TV app ecosystem is old and deprecated and outdated. And you're going to need to buy a new Fire Stick, a new Fire TV that are always evolving. Right? I mean, the reason you probably use a Fire Stick with your smart TV is because there are things the Fire Stick does better than your smart TV, you know? And 5 years from now, your TV apps are going to look archaic and you're going to be upgraded to the Fire Volcanoes, what they'll call it. It's going to be like, you know, what Volcano TV or whatever, right? From Amazon. But you get my point, right? So what happened was when people are like, all these OEM solutions from Ford, from all these companies, it's like they haven't had widespread adoption yet, especially in mixed fleets where there's a bunch of older vehicles interspersed with the newer ones. We don't have a lot of homogeneity in our fleet composition in the United States. A lot of fleets, let's say they're adopting Teslas. Guess what? They're still putting a Samsara system in it. They're still putting a Geotab Go 9 in a Tesla. They're still putting a Notto camera in. They're still putting a Lytix camera in. Like, they either need to make the integration better, because we know Tesla's hardware is great, but either their API is locked down, or it doesn't make sense for a company. If you have Pollock Telematics, it doesn't make sense for you to build a protocol just for Teslas in a fleet that has 500 Geo Metros and 3 Teslas. You don't necessarily want to have to build a custom solution for 3 Teslas in a fleet that has only 3 Teslas and 500 Geo Metros. You would rather say, let me just take the same camera I'm putting in the Geo Metros and make it work with a Tesla. It's just a matter of, you know, likely the hardware you're adding in, does it better than the hardware from the OEM solution, or the integration to combine the two is going to require more effort than it's worth.
It's the same mindset as Apple, right? When Apple creates these different ports and those ports are specific to them, right? It's a pain in the ass for the consumer because they don't have the flexibility to just use whatever charger that they want to use.
Here's a prime example. I think AI dash cameras, there's an ebb and flow and a balance to everything. The adoption of AI dash cameras has saved this industry for you and I, because if it was just plug and play off the OBD2, already we wouldn't have a job. But as soon as they,
I
no, for
disagree.
real,
I didn't
for
know. I
real.
disagree. You know why? You know why? So I was in the field for a good
Yeah,
amount of
yeah, yeah,
time, and
yeah.
when I speak to the customers, I've went and large organizations that they have simple installs, plug and play installs, and they also had a mechanics team, and they wasn't going to put their mechanics team to do installations. And I asked, hey, why? Well, the mechanics got mechanic work, so we don't employ them to do installation work.
Well, and there's also a labor. There's a union potentially, right? If there's a union, the mechanics are unionized, then they're not going to step out of that to do telematics.
Yep.
Hey, it's not in our collective bargaining agreement or whatever. But no, and by plug and play, I don't mean like a Y cable. As soon as you involve a Y cable or a T harness, you're going to be better off having someone that does this every day. I'm talking about like just an OBD2 device you plug right into the trapezoidal 16-pin plug on a vehicle. Right? Like at least there would still be people requiring professional installation, but I think the incident rate would be reduced. But the introduction of AI cameras, though, now you've got to place it in a specific place on the windshield where the driver can't block it with a visor. Like you're going to need more of an experienced person to figure out where to mount that, where to route the cable, route it behind the airbag, make it clean, make it nice. And as well, there's the question of liability. A lot of companies want to take the liability of a poor install off their own shoulders and, have basically a head to roll in the event that they don't like the way that something happened in the install field, right? So I think AI cameras, and going back to like adoption, like in the early days of AI cameras, there were companies that were doing 4 or 5 hour install because you had to run wires all over the cab, put multiple wires in, whatever. And what we ultimately saw is that those solutions just weren't selling in the wild because of the complexity and cost of getting it installed. Like, I won't mention them by name. I never had a relationship or contract with them. I don't even remember the name, but there was a company that had something that would rumble the driver's seat. They had rumble seats tied in with their AI system. So when the driver took their eyes off the road, it would literally shake their seat. And I'm like, I can't believe that wouldn't cause more accidents than it prevented. But you're a driver, you just get spooked. You're like, whoa, why is my seat shaking? Like, what's happening? And you get in a wreck. But either way, it was a creative idea, but it's so complex to install and deploy that the cost is just insurmountable when there are other solutions that will do a similar thing for far lower acquisition
Like
cost.
noise.
What's noise?
Instead of it rumbling, there's a noise that goes
Oh
off,
yeah, yeah.
right?
There's a
It's an
noise,
alarm.
there's feedback. I think the next AI camera version is honestly 360 cameras because your AI camera dual facing gives you visibility forward and backwards. But now, what if you want a multi-camera 360 camera system and you want visibility into the cloud? That requires very much so a professional install, especially if you got turn signal indicator triggers, you've got reverse wired triggers. And until someone comes out with such a stupid solution where the wireless technology is so good that somehow you can just stick cameras physically on the vehicle with magnets or something and run no wires, maybe make them solar powered, until someone really comes up with a robust solution, these 360 cameras are going to require more installation labor and effort, not less. So I think it only makes sense for fleets. They're going to want the visibility of the 360 camera solution, and it's going to require professional installation. So I think we're moving into this era of more techs needed, more skill needed, more installation needed.
Okay, so I got a quick fire round here.
All right.
Let me see how many questions I have. I think it's 3. All right. I got 3
Only
questions.
3?
Yeah,
Okay.
just 3.
I'm going to prove to you that I can give a short answer. I'm ready.
And we're gonna see. All right. So first one, the most underrated tool or gadget that every fleet installer should have in their kit.
Don't know if it has an actual name, but they are crimpers, where the crimp tool is on the tip of the tool so that you're not having to get the wire super back far into where the jaws clamp and potentially cut something. They have little plier teeth on the end, but the crimp tool is right behind those teeth. And they're like they're always like these Chinese brands or whatever. I think the ones I originally bought were like the Nikko brand, Nikko, I want to say. But if you just Google like Nico strippers, they're usually red handled. Someone's white labeling them from China because they always have a different name. But the crimper's at the tip of the jaw, so it makes it really good to work in super tight situations.
Question number 2. Biggest mistake new technicians make when getting into fleet installations?
I would say the most serious mistake in terms of gravity is not properly testing a vehicle before you work on it and not properly reporting issues with the vehicle to the right people before you start working on it.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to grow in this industry, what would it be?
Fill more than your present space.
Unpack that a little bit.
You have to keep a humble attitude that you are there to serve, not be served. And you have to look to go the extra mile and be willing. This isn't fair because I dispatch work, but even as a technician, let me give you an example. There are many technicians out there who, like I opened this discussion, they show up on site, no one's ready for them. The customer has a different story. Their work order has a different story. The person that requested the work has a different story. And they'll just say, this is totally screwed up. No one's ready for me. I'm out. Call me when you're ready. Call me when you sort this out. There are many technicians that will do that. They feel like they're just there to provide a service and be served. And, they're God's gift to the install world. The reason I excelled in the industry is I sorted all of it out. And it doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long to dig in and actually find the root cause of the problem. And you also build a lot of relationships along the way as you do that. So there's a lot of times a customer says, hey, how do I use my portal? And I'm just very clear. And I say, hey, I got to admit, I'm not trained on that. I'm not sure. They're usually pretty intuitive. Let's take 2 minutes and show me your question real quick. And I'll see but I'm just letting you know, I'm not a representative of this company and the fact that I'm not trained on their portal. I'm not the system of record, but let's take a look. Pull open your app. I'll see if I can answer your question, right? And don't spend all day on it, but just spend a couple minutes and just remember we are there to make other people's jobs easier. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to be sustainable. You're not going to last long in the industry.
Essentially being the resource too, right? It doesn't hurt to call the person that sent you on the job to see if they can assist even further if you're unable to assist. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, find you, schedule you, whatever the case, where could they do that?
Textbook. Go to Textbook. I'm on there personally as a technician in Boise, Idaho. So if you have something that needs done in Boise, Idaho, get on Textbook. Look me up. I'm there.
Spencer, I truly appreciate you coming on. I always appreciate your insights.
No, thank you so much, David. This has been great. My pleasure. Thanks for asking me. And I wouldn't have done this for just anybody. I like you. I like Textbook, and I believe in what you guys are trying to do. And I always refer my fellow technicians to you guys.